Welcome to the voices of transparency and excellence. We're not pivoting, the world is spinning, like a top. Let's stop, figure things out, get some answers. Come with us on this ride. Warm regards, Rick and Judi.
Welcome to our podcast series where we address crucial topics impacting our campus and community. I'm Judi Clarke, joined by...
Hi, everyone. I'm Rick Gatteau, and today we're really excited to explore how the marketplace horizon has changed in the context of jobs. And we are joined today by Lisa Chichura, who's the director of the Strategic Partnership for Industrial Resurgence, also known as SPIR, and Derek O'Connor, who leads Workforce Readiness and K-12 Engagement Programming in the Office of Research and Innovation, both here at Stony Brook University. Just want to thank you, Lisa and Derek, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Great. So you're what I would call bridge builders in the marketplace between education and workforce pathways. So Lisa, maybe I'll start with you. And if you could talk a little about the organization SPIR that you lead, which I know is a major university industry collaboration for business in New York State. I read that it started in 1994. So could you share with our listeners a bit about your job, what you do, and what spurred this idea over 30 years ago?
Yes, so SPIR started as a response to the downturn in the defense industry. And it was envisioned that we had tremendous resources here at the university that could be made available to defense contractors to help them to maybe retool or redesign their products from defense to commercial markets. So over the years, we work primarily with the College of Engineering and Applied Sciences. And over the years, the program has morphed away from the defense industry into helping companies solve all sorts of engineering and technical problems to help them get products to market, to help them develop new technologies. That's pretty much what we do.
That's great. I remember growing up in the defense industry, the changing market in that. Absolutely.
So Derek, let's talk a little bit and get your perspective. You know, what are some of the real world problems that some of your programs are solving, you know, particularly making sure that we've got some pre-college programs and also some professional development programs for our students. Tell us a little bit about some of those programs that you lead.
Absolutely. So when you say the real world, either challenges or problem solving that we're able to address with our programs, my workforce development initiatives really focus on utilizing the expertise of our two centers of excellence that we have, one in advanced energy and one in wireless information technology. And both of those entities are made up of industrial advisory boards. And we meet with these industrial advisory boards quarterly. And they provide us with what's going on right now in the workplace. What do they need? What are their skills gaps? What are their needs assessments? And what we're able to do is build programming that addresses that and prepares our students through non-credit offerings or initiatives or networking sessions, and presents to them what are some of the opportunities awaiting for them upon graduation. And oftentimes what we're able to do is take some of these programs. For instance, a lot of the utilities and power companies and energy developers have come to us often with the same problem, that aging workforce is really an issue right now. The utility workforce has been aging out at a rapid rate that we're seeing in the next 10 to 15 years, potentially 20, 30, even some estimates of 40% attrition. At the same time, New York State's trying to meet a new electrification goals, which has kind of doubled the impact of what we need in the electrical workforce. And Stony Brook, having such a strong electrical, mechanical, and civil engineering program, our students are really prepared to be trained in this area to meet that workforce need.
So interested. I know we're going to ask a little about students in a bit, but Lisa, I was wondering, could you talk a bit about who are kind of the dominant industry partners that you work with? Is there certain fields or industries that Stony Brook has traditionally worked with, or that you see kind of new opportunities in the future?
It varies a wide range of different kind of companies. We work a lot with Stony Brook incubator companies. We get a match from SUNY that enables us to offset the cost of companies to come and do projects with us. And in order to qualify for a match, the company has to be small as defined by the Small Business Administration, and they do have to be contributing to the tax base in the state. So we could really work with any kind of company. I mean, companies now everybody uses technology, and we're seeing like AI in all sorts of, we have medical companies that are looking at AI to help them with decision making and diagnostics and those sort of things. We traditionally are very strong in electrical, mechanical, applied math and statistics, and of course, computer science. And we do work with biomedical engineering. It really, every day we have different companies coming with different requests, but all technology focused, technology based, and companies are really looking at technology to help them solve many different problems that they have with their business platforms.
I'm curious too, when did we first have a partnership around AI? How long ago, how have you seen that evolve and develop in the last few years?
I would say it's fairly recent. It's certainly ramped up very recently, but we did do quite a bit of decision making, fault tree analysis, that sort of thing. Our very first project was I would say an AI, in that we were helping a company develop a platform where suppliers to the defense industry could locate alternate sources of parts. So that was like a huge database, data mining. That was probably one of the first AI type of projects that we worked on.
Oh, thank you.
So today's job market is certainly changing, and there's some notable differences from just even a couple of years ago. So from your perspective, Derek, how are employees rethinking how they recruit and hire early career talent?
So I would say that the industries and the partners that we're working with are understanding the importance of working with the next generation of workforce and getting to those students earlier. They understand that oftentimes when they go to meet with students who are in a college program, oftentimes they have already been in a SPIR program or done a SPIR project, and they're already on an internship pathway. And oftentimes these internships turn into full-time careers. So what they need to do is start engaging students at a high school level. And what we've seen is great success there is providing not just internships, but paid training opportunities to high school students and working with us to kind of be a hub for convening local schools or community members to kind of come together and start being aware of what are the career trajectories by doing these projects early, but also getting that awareness so that they start thinking about this not when they're already in college, but thinking about this in 9th, 10th, 11th grade, and kind of being on a career pathway by just being aware of something through either a hands-on lesson or engaging with an industry mentor, or even doing a project that's sponsored by an industry partner.
And just to follow up, I think, we think about internships and we think, like the reciprocity as students develop these applicable skills and these translational skills and so on. But you struck on something that is really important, that is a paid internship, and how important that is from the equity and fairness for students who have financial responsibilities. Can either of you talk a little bit about the paid internship and why that's important?
I do not believe that a student should ever work for a job as a volunteer. I don't think that that's proper. We pay all of our students. Undergraduates qualify for an hourly rate. Graduate students can be paid hourly or with a stipend. If they are paid with a stipend, they also get a tuition scholarship. It's a nice situation for a graduate student. The key is that with the SPIR program, the students are not just doing internships. They're given a very clear, focused project with a deliverable. And this helps them to perform in the marketplace when they do look for work, because it's not just designing something abstract on paper. They have cost containments. They have maybe size restrictions. They have a time delivery. There's all sorts of problems that might crop up in manufacturing that might have to be dealt with. Sometimes if something's going on an airplane, it might have weight limitations. It takes them beyond the classroom and beyond the laboratory to now oftentimes they go to the company and they work with engineers at the company. They get that experience of like total immersion. And I believe that they they do have a deliverable that's due at the end of the project, and that should be compensated. I don't think that that's something that should be done for free, even if it might not be as high caliber a person that you might hire for a permanent position.
I wanted to ask each of you, I know, Derek, you're in the K-12 space, and so one question I wanted to ask you was around the partnership between K-12 and higher ed, and where I think in American education, there seems to often be this gap and how to close that gap. And Lisa, I wanted to just to follow up on the question, the topic you were talking about. How does industry, if it does at all, influence what is being taught in the classroom or vice versa? Is there, because again, thinking about students, some of the majors you mentioned, they must be walking into that environment with, right, they're given a project, a task to complete. They have some knowledge to be able to apply that knowledge to a problem to solve. Is there the connection in that space? And so maybe, Derek, do you want to take first around the K-12 higher ed, and then we could look at the industry and higher ed connection?
Yeah, absolutely. With K-12 to higher ed, using really Stony Brook as a model, this reminds me actually of a conversation that Judi, you and I had a while ago about how, Stony Brook has an opportunity and a responsibility to be a good neighbor. And what Stony Brook is able to do, not just as an R1, not just as a SUNY flagship, not just as, I believe we're Long Island's largest single site employer, what we're able to do is be a hub that connects, your community-based organizations, your K-12 institutions, your industry partners, government agencies. And when they can be that convening arm because they have industrial advisory boards, they have degree programs, master's students, PhDs, research opportunities, everyone can be a part of these types of programs. And the initiatives that we're able to run that might start as what seems as a K-12 initiative ends up being industry gets something out of it by having it be a part of their community benefits outreach program. Higher ed gets something out of it as a recruiting ground for students. Community colleges get something out of it by being a bridge or a pathway program for students who are jumping from a CTE or a technical-based program or like a BOCES into higher ed, but they need to go to community college first to kind of get that next step and develop that maturity. But what Stony Brook can do is be the convener of all of that. And be a place for just continuous learning and where everyone could come and have an experience.
Great. Lisa, would you take the other question I asked about the industry and higher ed?
Sure. I think that different departments work differently, but most of the departments do have academic advisory boards, and those are technically supposed to drive the curriculum and where the curriculum goes. Not all departments have the same success rate with that. But the departments that do listen to the industry partners and can be agile with their curriculum can actually be more successful in placing students who have appropriate backgrounds to service the needs of the different communities.
So from the employer side, what skills and qualities or experiences are companies prioritizing now that they may not have been as important in the past? Is there a shift?
They want to see real life experience. They want to see internships. Years ago, internships were really not a thing, not as focused. Companies may hire the student that they had working on their SPIR project, but even students that aren't hired by those companies come back and tell me that internship on their resume was key to giving them extra points in the interview process.
I would say also we're seeing a shift recently where for years the emphasis was on those technical skills. You heard learn to code, get project management certification, learn how to the basics of cybersecurity and ISO training and NIST training. Now we're seeing an emphasis, or because of a deficiency that we're seeing of the emerging workforce in those what was originally called soft skills now being upgraded into what's being called essential skills. Simple things as networking, handshaking, writing a LinkedIn resume, being able to network. That's a skill that especially the students who are about to enter the workforce who had maybe been in high school or their final years of middle school during those COVID years really have lacked. What we've tried to be able to do is make sure in all of our programs are very technically based, we are renewable energy, AI, cybersecurity, but we're making sure that all of our lessons weave in that networking training, how to write a LinkedIn profile, just looking someone in the eye. Just for an anecdote with our K-12 programming, our summer youth employment program, on the first day of the program, we walked in and simply asked these students, okay, what t-shirt size do you need? And they couldn't answer the question. I was like, what shirt size do you wear? And they couldn't do it. By the end of week 2, we had a networking event with all the major utilities and industry partners and trade labor unions. They were exchanging business cards, shaking hands, laughing, adding them as LinkedIn profiles. So that training is so essential for not just for living, but also giving you the confidence to apply for that job, to walk into an interview, to sit down with a boss and renegotiate a salary.
Wonderful example. We already touched this, but I was just curious if there was more in terms of how students have reacted. What have they shared with you about their experience and what they took away from this opportunity?
Students are very grateful to have the opportunity. Unfortunately, I have far fewer projects than I can service the amount of students that want to participate. But for the most part, the experience, being in the environment, being able to go to a company, a lot of them have created incredible mentored situations with the people that they work with at the company. And even though they don't go on to work for the company, they do stay in touch. And many stay in touch with me as well, because when we set up a SPIR project, we always have a campus person that's also directing and guiding and providing support for the students. I think that most of them really value the opportunity.
Great.
I think what's interesting, and I think most students that come from high school, it's like, I need to get my professional skills. If I have a resume, if I've passed my classes, I got a degree, I'm ready for the workforce. And our workforce is changing, and the way we do things are changing. And whether it's a philosophy or it's technology or it's just efficiencies, how do we create the workforce of tomorrow, knowing that some of these jobs will look extremely different than even how they present at the time that we're training students? So how do you create experiences where you embed curiosity and resiliency and problem solving and so on? How are those parts of your training?
I would say that, and this is something that I learned from my workforce mentor, Pat Malone, who we've all worked with and learned a ton from, that you need to meet the student or the trainee or the person exactly where they're at this moment. And for and not an example, but a tactic I would take with that is using as an example our Cyber Learn program. That's a program that was developed because an industrial advisory board partner came to us and said that cybersecurity in the energy industry needs people immediately. There are unfilled internship positions that need to be filled, and we have a talent gap, but Stony Brook would likely have the students for this. So we developed a non-credit program while the curriculum was being certified, and we needed to roll out the program to our students to get them aware not just of the internships that are available, but the actual cybersecurity training in New York for the energy industry. But we couldn't just develop that as a class. We had to develop, and we couldn't develop it as a club because there's, rules about developing clubs and what, constitutes as getting university support. But instead, what we did was utilize Campus Lifetime. Our students are extremely dedicated, and this is a good thing. Our students do not want to miss class under any circumstances. They are
Speak the truth. Yeah,
they are very nervous about missing class. Forget missing a whole class. They don't want to be late. They want to make sure they get there early. Yeah. So that Campus Lifetime, and the fact that now there's a second Campus Lifetime, Mondays and Wednesdays, that is time that we are able to utilize to meet the students where they're at, where we know they're free, and bring a program to them to accommodate them. And it's not just about handholding and making sure that everything is easy for them. It's recognizing that, as you said, the workforce is changing. The employee staying at a job for 30 years in the same position or the same company, that doesn't really exist anymore. My father worked at the same aerospace company for nearly 40 years. I will not be at a job for 40 years the way that either he was, the way that his peers are. So if something is not, to our liking, we are going to take the initiative to go out and make that change. And I'm not saying he couldn't, but it's more that we will make those changes if we are seeking something better, or we are wanting something to change for us, not just in our work life, but our home life. So making a program for students where they're at right now and capitalizing on that availability allowed us to roll out a program that first got 27 students into it year one, and now year two, it's jumped up to 42 students. So that's nearly a 50% increase. And the students are getting something out of it, but they're using that doubly available time with the Mondays and the Wednesdays, meeting them where they're at so that they can, complete the program, but also complete their classes. We have to understand that the talent is exclusive at this point. So they're going to find something better if we don't deliver what is needed, just like in sales.
I know you lead several programs, and Judi and I have had the good pleasure of working with you on several of them. And we thought maybe you could give a little bit of a highlight or summary of how the programs operate. One, I know, is the High School Women in STEM program, the Summer Youth Employment Program, and then the High School Hackathon. Do you want to each take a couple of them and share the genesis of it and how they operate?
So those programs, like I said, you've been able to work on them, but it's, again, I'm so grateful for the support you've both provided and the guidance, not just from the resource perspective, but the encouragement. Judi, you've been a great, keynote speaker to the Women in STEM and the Summer Youth Employment Program, and Rick, your team has supported our High School Hackathon. What we're able to do with those programs is really highlight the resources that are available at Stony Brook and give our students an ability to give back to those high school programs. As you know, we have a lot of commuter and local students, and they are excited to sometimes work with, their former high school coming back and doing a program here. But how those programs originally started was through the Presidential Mini Grant Program. And we were a recipient of that when we originally wanted to figure out how do we work with industry to make the students aware of those energy jobs that are going to be available over the next, 5 to 10 years as New York State looks to not just, rework its power grid, but integrate offshore wind and add more utility scale solar, move to geothermal energy. And we came up with the Summer Youth Employment Program in partnership with Hogland Energy and the Suffolk County Department of Labor and all the major utilities. And through the Presidential Mini Grant, through your office, we were able to hold that working group where everyone came together and developed a student profile and came up with a curriculum. And at the end of it, we developed that 7-week program where 20 students, all from under-resourced communities, are paid $17 an hour, 6 hours a day, 4 days a week, to get trained in renewable energy and advanced manufacturing at Brookhaven National Lab, Suffolk Community College, and here at Stony Brook. And by the end of it, they haven't just earned the $3,000. They've also gotten skills and awareness, and really excited that I actually ran into one of the students from year one. She's now in our CyberLearn program as an intern here as a computer science major. A second student is now also in the civil engineering program as an undergraduate. So that program evolved originally from a presidential mini grant just to looking to see how can we use Stony Brook resources and industry partnerships to train that next generation of workforce. The High School Women in STEM is a similar genesis that we, again, utilize the presidential mini grant and look to see how we could get more women into the STEM fields by showing them what Stony Brook has to offer in this area. And luckily, we've established great partnerships with Dean Gropak with the School of Health Professions and the Institute for Advanced Computational Science. And we even use CWIT for web design and energy training. So those are two of the major programs there.
Fantastic.
So there's a challenge in K-12 education. How do teachers keep up with the advancement of technology as trying to prepare their students who were born with almost a cell phone or some kind of electronic device in front of them? How do teachers keep up with this technological evolution that's exploding?
So there's an initiative here that we house at Stony Brook, but it's a New York State program called the New York State Master Teacher Program. And this is an initiative where teachers in the K-12 space who either teach STEM for the majority of their classes or are actual science, technology, engineering, or math teachers are able to get accepted into a fellowship where they get a stipend for 4 years to get professional development training in emerging technology areas. And this cohort of students who are actually teachers come to Stony Brook for quarterly meetings. And what they do is they do trainings that are provided usually by either industry partners or they take it upon themselves to hire a facilitator. And they do these trainings in AI and in robotics and in cybersecurity. We've done it in offshore wind, and they even did a NYSERDA-based renewable energy training. So the goal is for these teachers to get trained in these emerging tech areas, get that content, and then integrate it into their classrooms. We've even done it in partnership with Ørsted, the offshore wind developer, to teach the teachers how to run offshore wind training in the classroom. As well as working with the teachers on the CTE side, career and technical education, and teach them how to install solar panels, how to install heat pumps, and then they could take that back to their carpentry classes and teach the students on a day-to-day basis.
Lisa, the same thing could be said with our faculty and our staff in front of the room. How do they navigate this?
Yeah, a teacher's role is not necessarily to teach technology, but they're teaching the students how to think.
The critical thinking is incredibly important, and technology is a tool.
Correct. Yes.
Lisa, 30 years. 30 years. It would be interesting to know, kind of from a longitudinal perspective, like some of the evaluations that you have done and some of the assessment, some of the testimony from participants in your program. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the impacts that have happened over that 30 years that you're most proud of?
So I've only been with the program for 26 years.
Okay. We like to round up.
But we're very focused on helping Stony Brook technologies, like professors with patents. We invested a lot of resources in the virtual colonoscopy way back when. We partner with companies and faculty to help them to bring additional funding into the region. We help them get a lot of SBIRs, STTRs.
And what do those stand for?
Small business innovation research grants and small business tech transfer grants. The tech transfer grants require that a company work with the university and that technology be transferred either from the company to the university or from the university to the company. And we have some very innovative entrepreneurial faculty members who have some great technology, so we've been able to help them with that. We generally have between 80 and 100 students a year working on projects, so that's quite impactful. It's not as many as I would like, considering the amount of students that we do have in the engineering disciplines, but it's a nice number to be proud of. We're trying to get more faculty involved. This year, I think we had 40 faculty members, and I think we had about 50 companies that were working with us. So the program is very popular. The companies, we get a lot of repeat business.
That's great. And just one point on success of SPIR. I mean, I've worked with Lisa a lot on the SPIR program and helping bring some of the industry speakers and partners sometimes back to the graduate and undergraduate students as a lunch and learn program. And when Lisa recruits speakers, sometimes we're able to work together on that based on workforce contacts. And the fastest speaker confirmations we ever got was when Lisa wanted to do an alumni panel. It didn't take much to get students to come back to talk about their SPIR experience. And that was, I think, our best attended event that we ran. So I think the students want to come back and talk about their experience.
And I'm sure our current students seeing them just mustering. Yeah, I know we're about to wrap up, but if I could ask just one quick last question for each of you. So what does the future hold? You're all about innovation. So what's the next big thing? What do you think's coming down the pike next?
I would say having more connections with our partners at Suffolk Community College, making sure that those students we're able to maximize some of those technical and hands-on skills that they're getting in those programs and building upon those for experiences in the new technologies that are coming online at the Energy Center, like HVDC technology, high voltage direct current, ground source heat pumps. And then, of course, with AI, there are a multitude of opportunities. And then with our K-12 programs, seeing how we can make them more statewide and replicate our programs throughout the region.
And I think from SPIR perspective, having us be able to have incubator companies coexist with faculty and to work on innovation together, it's really, really exciting for us.
Well, that's fantastic. I've been here 24 years, and I learned a lot today that I didn't even know. So thank you so much. We really appreciate, Lisa and Derek, you being here with us and sharing your incredible insights and experiences today.
Absolutely. And we hope our listeners find these discussions informative and empowering as we navigate these times together. Thank you again to our guests for their valuable contributions.
Yep. So join us again for next week's episode. For now, I'm Rick Gatteau.
And I'm Judi Brown Clarke. And thank you for tuning in.